All right.
Welcome everybody to the December 3rd Design and Usability meeting for Backdrop CMS. Jen is here, but asked me to start facilitating. We usually do the warning about turning off the cameras before we start the cameras, or do we do that now? It's too late, but we are recording this meeting. If you want to turn off your camera, you can. Just be aware of that. Thanks to everybody watching. Are you setting up the YouTube link or putting it out on Slack for anybody who wants to? Let's just jump right in and do a round of introductions. We're just asking people to give their name, where they're from, and any other short snippet of what's new in your life or what you're working on would be good. And I think everybody knows how to do that that's here. So Luke, do you want to start?
Sure. Hopefully I'm audible. I am Luke McCormick, coming to you from beautiful San Ramon, California, where it's only a little cool. I do web product management and some programming here. I am leading or following in various ways the Ready to Wear initiative, which is about design issues and kind of bubbled up to the top, and I'm going over my 30 seconds. So the one thing I was going to say, and I'll chime into this later, is I poked around the Drupal 8 theme world recently and found a surprising number of kind of ready to wear stuff that I want to talk about a little bit later. And I'll bounce it over to Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Lampton. I'm really cold today for some reason. Like Luke, it looks nice where you are, but cold here. Let's see. I don't know that I have anything exciting in the design usability world, except for that I am working on a backdrop site right now that has an amazingly beautiful theme. I purchased it though, so I'm not sure I can make it available on Backdrop Contrib, but I'm excited to show it off when I get it done. Maybe some of it can be reused. Let's see. Joseph, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. And yeah, I don't know. I missed the last like 3 weeks of meetings, so I'm here again.
Welcome back.
And Joseph calls on me.
Sure. Yeah, you're the last person.
Yeah. I'm Tim Erickson. I'm here in Deerwood, Minnesota, and I so wanted to pick up my camera and show you guys who are Californians complaining about the cold, all the snow outside my window. But unfortunately, I'm not used to being tied down to a dock. I actually have my laptop connected to a dock, so all kinds of crazy things would happen if I tried to disconnect it right now.
I think if I was in Minnesota, it would be warmer though, because the houses would be properly insulated. But in California, people are like, it's not that cold, and then it's drafty all winter.
Right. Yeah. Well, I hope that's true. We do have a well-insulated house, and I am well dressed for the temperature. But yeah, it's freezing. It's below freezing outside, and we have just a little bit of snow on the ground. So we'll call that my introduction. So if I follow the agenda, we jump right into the theme initiative update. So lucky, I know Luke has a lot to tell us. Luke, do you have any updates on the theme initiative?
Yeah, you know.
Beyond what you already shared.
Yes, no, I'm trying to figure out how to tie the thing together. I think I need maybe some real-time meeting or something, because I've been sort of log jammed at the penultimate stage. Like, okay, like I understand what we have now, so I need to figure out how to bring it home. But basically, I think it ties into some other things, notably the documentation things that come and go, because what I've become convinced of doing this is that there's two sides to it, and the theme initiative, like the thing that I was trying to spark to, can at best only do part of it. Like it can make it so that you have choices that you can choose to enable you to launch like a decent looking site. But no matter what we do with the technology, the user interface, there's going to be a side of it of needing to communicate to the user somehow what you should do. And this ties in. I'm anxious actually to see Jen's beautiful theme, because I think a large part of this is what might be a very small like encapsulation of what somebody putting together a site needs to look for. Like, how do you know? How do you tell? And it's hard to find on the information on the net, for example, because if you don't know, and if you try to Google it for it, you find like incredibly cutting edge things with experts arguing about whether the technology they were using 3 weeks ago is still relevant. And if you're just, if you barely know what a font is or what white space is, like, you're just not, it's not going to help you all. So given our audience, I feel like a big part of it is there's got to be some sort of entryway, like, okay, you who's not the full-time site designer and you need a site, here's what you need to focus on. So I mean my goals for the Ready to Wear initiative were to block off like the danger areas. I wanted to make sure we're not leading new users into starter themes where you can't even get started unless you're already a CSS expert and various things like that. But that'll at best get halfway. Like what you're going to end up with, if you achieve that, is a blank slate, and you're still going to have to fill it with stuff, and you're going to have some sense for how to fill it with stuff. And I've experienced. I've been playing around with, for example, the new WordPress designs and things like Wix and Squarespace, and even those, you can get like sample sites and sample things, but if you put away the samples, you're still left with this blank slate thing, and there's still kind of a big process of moving from like your ideas, your content, to having it presented on the site. So that was kind of just like a brain dump, but I think what I want to do is get a little assistance to help me figure out like what and how I should deliver just to finish this. There's other stuff I want to work on too. And I think chain into like a documentation effort to try to help our users with more than just code. I think the manual side of it, the help, the guidance side, is the other half to this piece. Seems.
Well, just a couple of thoughts on your initiative. One, Luke, I feel like just having it on the agenda every week has been having an impact, and that I've been seeing people. We've got some modules that are useful to us that have been ported. There actually were a couple of new contrib themes that popped up. I know it's certainly kept it on my personal agenda, and while I haven't had a lot of time to work on it, I've certainly been thinking about it. I did just have a conversation before this meeting with a designer that we're going to do a new, we're about to start a new D7 to backdrop project for a small nonprofit. And I made a specific point to the design, and I got a designer working on a custom design for it. And I told him one of my goals is for him to design it in a way that we can build it out as a contrib theme and make it reusable. And I think that's probably going to be another 4 to 6 weeks before we actually start working on the theme part. But that, I still am having a hard time wrapping my head around what an approved contrib theme has to do to be compatible with all of the templates, because I never really take a theme and then like try it with all the different templates to make sure it works, right? I always get the template out, or I kind of know what my layout is going to be, and I get a theme that works with it. And so this idea about having a theme that's generic enough that it can work with all of the core layouts, I just haven't had the time. And like one of the big steps forward I think this initiative has helped me with is we have now that module, that the theme switcher module. And just in the little bit of time that I played with that, it was really helpful to be able to have some content on the site and then just switch between different themes. And I mean, I think we saw, we right away spotted some some problems in one or two of the themes. At least one of the themes had an issue that got fixed because of that.
Yeah, I would say actually that a ready-to-wear flavored theme doesn't necessarily have to work with every use case. But in order for it to achieve the vision, it has to be documented, right? You can say, this is good for a very text-heavy site, and if that's what you have, then use this. It wouldn't be necessarily good for like a gallery or something, right? So it's okay for there to be gaps as long as those gaps are not secret.
Well, one of the things that I think is happening, Luke, is I think you have a whole picture of what it is you're trying to accomplish. Early on, we talked about some really specific, like shorter term goals. And one of them was like to have an idea of an approved theme, a theme that does meet certain criteria. And one of our goals was to like settle on, well, what does that mean? And that would be a really concrete, solid thing that we could finish. But and I think we talked some about it, but I don't think we made a decision there. And the other thing was then like to have this site where you, with some sample content, where you could put a theme on it, you could try it out in different layouts with that content, and we would know, yes, this one matches the criteria for being approved or not. And then we could direct people towards the themes that we've approved. And I think, my own sense is that we started down that path, but you have other ideas that in your head that you're thinking about, and we kind of lost focus of some of the simple things we could do just to get done. And those things by no means would accomplish, I think, everything that you're trying to get to. But to me, they would be really good, concrete things that we could actually check off and say, yep, we've done that part. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think actually, I mean, one of the things that's been happening is some of the low hanging fruit just gets done, right? Jen looks at the theme page and has an idea, and she just fixes it. so it's no longer on the to-do list. In some sense, Simplo is kind of pushing towards that ready-to-wear feeling because you include a bunch of themes, and they're all pretty friendly. So I've been struggling a little bit trying to do stuff that's seems already been done, but maybe we need to just leverage that, come up with a demo site on Simplo that shows off theme switching between a couple of things, and being like, okay, here's your choices. And I still think actually that we're missing some of the big changes that I have in mind, and maybe I can document that, like for example, the colors things that the ready to go themes all look sort of similar, right? And none of them are black, or that look punk or artistic or that appeal. They all seem to be like straight ahead business themes that need to go from being like, boring gray suit and any kind of customization has to be put into them. So you can hire a designer to do that, but the whole theory is can we get it so you don't have to hire a designer to get something that looks presentable. So I feel like there's two sort of business analyst-y things that I could do that might move this along. One would be I could put together acceptance criteria for what I'd believe we'd want to, what we, I can use first person plural, you know, what we would need to see to kind of christen a theme as being ready to wear.
Right.
And then maybe sort of a market analysis, like okay, given what we have now, what are the gaps, or what's the actually there's a business analyst term. I need to do a gap analysis.
Sure.
Between current state and future state, and then we can turn that into a set of requirements.
If you're like, you mentioned like having a meeting, and I know for me, putting something on the calendar helps. And I've been meaning to do that for my initiative, the telemetry initiative. It's just schedule a meeting, and even if one other person comes, that'll just help me focus time on it. If we do that, you know, I'll show up to your meeting, or I'll try.
Yeah. What's a good day of the week? Let's just pick one, and we'll aim for that.
Well, I've been thinking about trying to focus my backdrop stuff on Tuesdays or Thursdays. So
okay.
Either
Tuesdays.
before or after these meetings, or
yeah,
or a different time on Tuesday would be a good time for me.
All right. Well, why don't we? What if we like targeted this time? Because this time seems to work. I mean, we experiment with different times, but you know, should we look for like noon on Tuesday to do one? I mean, one of the things, you know, studying business as I have is for years and years is one of the things that I aspire to do is to not endlessly create meetings, because then you end up, you know, with all your time talking about doing stuff and no time actually doing it. But you have to do it sometimes. So
yeah, and it doesn't have to be a meeting. It could be kind of a working session too. Although I don't know if we're ready. We'll figure that out when we get together. If we're ready to work, right, or if we need to talk some more.
So let's start setting up some time on Tuesday, just so that we share that expectation that's when we try to make something happen, and that gives enough space so that it's not, because Thursday has its own solar system of things that go around it, and you can stay a little bit away from that. That'd be good. Tuesday it is.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments about this initiative before we move on? Okay. So my amateur meeting facilitation hat on. So we have this list of UX issues that we kind of go through every week. Well, sometimes we don't list. Is it helpful to read through all of these, or should we just look through and see which ones need to be talked about?
Yeah.
I guess what I'll start to do is read them out loud. The promoted, I haven't looked at them to see if there's any updates on them. We got promoted module themes on installer. Is anything happening there? No. So actually, here's something we could talk about. Move the clear logs message button to the bottom of deblog message page. That is that old issue that got kind of bogged down, and I think there was a threat to take that to the PMC, but then nothing's happened. Is that the one, Jen?
Yeah.
Should we? I'm guessing that you haven't looked at that in a while.
Mm-mm.
I have in the past suggested on some of these issues that we sort of give a one last chance before to see if there's consensus before we take it to the PMC. I'm not sure if that issue isn't one that's beyond that. Or I don't know. Do you have an idea like how we could unstick that issue?
No, I mean, I feel like
so much work has went into it.
Yeah, and I feel like there's so many ideas in there that I wouldn't even know. It's
Right.
like every time they're like, hey, can we have consensus on idea C? And someone's like, what about idea D? And you're like, oh, and then you have to kind of go all through all the questions again. So I don't know. I think I need to reread that issue to see. It does seem like we're getting closer to something people agree on.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, let's say, I mean, we can't take that issue to the PMC without like a good summary of it, right?
Yeah.
and we need to know what the question is we'd be asking the PMC. So there's at least some work that would have to happen. And so my reluctance of like saying, yeah, let's take that to the PMC is I don't have the time right now to go through and summarize it. So I would sort of say that the next step is somebody has to go through, review that, figure out whether we're close to a consensus or not. And if we're not, figure out like, what is it, how can the PMC constructively help?
Yeah, I think the summary that you added earlier this year is really good, where you went through and consolidated all of the objections to each approach in the top issue. That it could be that
for this one.
Yeah, I think so. Wait, which issue are we talking about?
I'm talking about the move clear log messages. Button.
Yeah, that's the one, isn't it?
I might have. I don't remember doing that for this issue, but I might have.
Yeah, somebody did it. I thought it was you.
Well, it doesn't matter who did it. Somebody did it. Yeah, I'm seeing that.
And I think that might be enough for the PMC to be like, okay, I see all the perspectives. Let's try and make a decision.
Okay. Well, so do you think it's ready to take to the PMC, or do you agree that we might want to have somebody review it first?
I mean, I think it looks like, well, it's just you, me, and Gregory that voted in favor of BW Panda's comment saying take it to the PMC. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, my vote wasn't, I vote for escalating this. Yeah. I don't always, a thumbs up doesn't always mean I'm voting in favor of it. Sometimes it's just a good point.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not against taking it to the PMC. I'd rather we didn't have to, but here. So what did the last comment is, Olaf, clarifying before we. Okay. Well, I think we should just make a note on this issue that we'd like to take it to the PMC, but we'd like for somebody to sort of review it first and make sure that that's necessary, and that we're not close. The other thing, I think to take it to the PMC, we almost need an advocate, somebody who can answer questions and understand the issue. And for me, that would take a little bit of work. And I might be willing to do that, but I've got another issue right now I'm advocating for in the PMC, which will probably go pretty quickly. But
okay.
Okay. Well, should we leave it there? Is there anything more we can do right now?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. These other issues, the next few issues, I saw your cursor moving around. Have you looked at any of these issues? Better help text for layout path field. What's the status there?
It needs work. Indigo Zella found some problems with my leaves pull request, so it's failing tests.
And that's an issue I created. I've forgotten about this one.
Yeah, I liked that one. I opened another browser window hoping to get to it today.
Good.
Create a backlog.
Yeah,
open browser tabs.
I think it's one that seemed like it wouldn't be too much work, and it would be nice to just wrap it up. So
and it would be a huge improvement.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's. I will make sure that's on my list of. I'm going to open a browser tab too and see if I can get to it. At least commenting on it. Rename local module. I don't remember this one.
Well, it's actually locale module, which is part of the problem.
Okay. So is it? I remember seeing. I don't use the locale module much. Rename locale. Yep, I get it. Oh. So locale is its current name. It's misspelled in the agenda. Okay.
In the agenda.
I'll fix that. Although I need to fix it in the template.
I'll leave it to you. Okay. Let's see. So in Drupal 8, this module is now called interface translation, which I think is a lot better than locale. Locale is one of those things that doesn't really describe the module very well, but I think there was some concern about changing the human name in the middle of a 1.x cycle.
Okay. One of my concerns about this, the agenda for this design and UX meeting, is that sometimes issues like this get on the agenda and then there's not like an advocate for them. And I think Gregory probably got this on the agenda. Huh? Okay. I'm just not, it sounds to me like we don't have any updates on that.
No.
And export import tab order, I haven't seen any activity on that recently. So I think we should kind of skip over some of these unless somebody has an update.
Well, export import tab order is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I think I recommended just swapping export and import. But Doc Wilmot raised a better point that rather than grouping them by like single site and full site and then having export and import in each, if we group them by export and had single site, full site, and import single site, full site, that might be a better match to people's mental model. And he said that and it sort of blew my mind. But now every time I see those tabs, I want it the way he recommended instead of the way I recommended in this issue.
Okay.
So I keep looking at this going, I want to do Doc Wilmot's thing more than my thing. So I haven't been thinking about it. Or was this, was it Gregory's recommendation? Maybe it was Gregory.
I think it's Gregory's, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is probably a relatively simple one to do, isn't it? To implement or not? Or is it more complicated than it looks?
It is simple, but we need to do a lot of backwards compatible URL redirection because we're going to be changing rather than being like full/export, it's going to be export/full. And so there's got to be a lot of mapping so that if anyone had linked to one of the other ones, it'll map it back. And there's a lot of examples of that in core. We've got this go to deprecated thing. But it's going to be a bigger pull request than you'd think because there's going to be all those extra lines in there.
Got it.
So simple, but messy, maybe.
Okay. So do we have, there haven't been a lot of comments on it.
No. I mean, I think maybe if we had a pull request for people to use, it would be easier to get feedback because they could try it and be like, oh yeah, I like that better. Like, no, I don't like it better.
Exactly. I think my only comment is that I don't, the ideas make sense, but I don't feel strongly about them until that always can change once you see a pull request. So, okay.
I mean, my thought about this is it's a little bit rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, right? Like isn't the whole user experience of config kind of controversial? I mean, does anyone ever import or export single features? Is that a thing? Like yeah. I've never used it, but so
I often will like copy a view from one site to another using that, just because it's faster. But
I might have on really rare occasions. I mean, I think that that's a useful thing to have, but yeah.
I mean, it feels like recipes or something like that is the big picture.
Yeah, but I think like before
this.
we add recipes, it would be good to make sure we had this interface in a state where we want it so that we can just drop recipes in the right place rather than being like, oh, well, do we put recipes so it's like single full recipes or is it export single full recipes? I don't know. But it would be nice
this, I'm worried about using up energy that could be used for other things. But does this actually move that other side forward?
It doesn't move.
Does this have to be done anyway?
It doesn't move it forward, but if we do this now, there will be less work later. Like if we do this later, there will be more work to solve this issue because we'll have 2 more pages that need to be redirected. So, and I think that the problem with solving the recipe thing is not an interface problem. it's like a more of a technical challenge of like, how do you actually get the backend to do the copying and installing and exporting that you want? Maybe there's a user interface challenge on the export piece, but for the most part, it's not like which tabs go in which order. It's just sort of a different kind of problem. It's just the same part of the site.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's true. I would like to I mean, certainly having a PR, it would be nice to just quickly think about to make sure that this isn't changing anything that we'd want to rechange later. I don't know that it is, and it sounds like probably not. But so yeah, Luke had a rough experience with config in the last week, right? And I've had a few other people start conversations about config management in the last week. And there are some bigger issues there, but I don't think that should stop us from getting the low-hanging fruit.
I've started hacking backup and migrate module and seeing if I can integrate config into that.
Great.
So that just about killed me this week, and I'm going to tell this story quick because I have a site where I have backup and migrate set up to do like daily backups of the database and file, but I was going to go and sync my dev site my dev site with the production site, and I just had a brain fart and did it backwards. I exported my dev config and imported it into production, and boom, I just overwrote my production configuration. And I was able to solve this because I had a complete server snapshot from the night before. So I was able to get into my server, a snapshot of the Linode, pull out the config files and replace them. But it would have been so nice if backup and migrate could be backing up my config files as well on a daily basis. So anyways, that's a different topic. I spent 2 hours figuring out how to retrieve those files off of my Linode backup because I'd never done that before. The next, we should move on. There are some new business. So actually, we're almost out of time.
Yeah,
Let's skip ahead. Let's skip ahead to the one issue that I really want to talk about, if that's okay.
Yeah.
There's better defaults for page layouts. I want to, one, just confirm whether or not we should try and solve that. And two, Jen, the holdup on that is that sort of I have a PR that just changes the default layout. I think we've talked about this before, and unfortunately, I can't find my notes. You have suggested on a couple of occasions that we do something like have a theme override.
Template. Yeah, so the way that a layout template file works is that it has printed in the template the page title, the messages, and the tabs. They're specific variables that get plugged into the tpl.php file. And pretty early in Backdrop's release cycle, we realized that we wanted to be able to move those things around on the page. And someone came up with a great idea, I think it was probably Doc Wilmot, on how to make a block that when placed removed that variable or set the variable to null in the template file so that it was smart enough to know if there was a block not to print the messages twice.
Right.
And when we did that, it gave us a lot more flexibility about what we could do with the templates. If we start every new site with having those 3 blocks placed instead of using where they are in the template, I think it'll be really confusing to people as to why those things are in the template. And it might cause people to not put them in their own templates. And that could cause, if somebody removed one of those in the future, for example, like never seeing messages on your site, which is a super huge problem.
Right.
And so I don't know if my like chain of concerns is like valid enough to like stop this from moving forward, but it creates some, I mean, it's different than what we have now. I don't know if people learning it will think it's more intuitive in the future or not. But I think that we have other ways to solve this. And if the issue is only something we want to change in the basis theme and not something we want to change everywhere this layout is used, then we can do that by overriding this layout in the basis theme and moving those variables to where we want them in the page. So yeah, there are issues with backwards compatibility. If you had a site using a basis sub-theme, your blocks would get moved. Your page title, messages, and breadcrumbs would get moved into their new locations if a new template file landed in the core basis theme.
Right.
I don't know if we want that or not. It would be easy enough to undo, like if that person who had that custom theme just copied the file from core into their template, it would be fine. But it would be an unexpected change, which I would like to avoid for existing sites.
So I have questions about whether or not I hear the concerns you're raising, and like I'm not entirely sure that the current solution that I proposed really does that, what you were saying. Also, I feel like our whole CSS thing is that we don't want to make these kinds of changes that then people would have to fix. And it seems to me like, I mean, it wasn't clear to me right away, but when I went back and thought about this issue earlier this week, I'm like, yeah, this is not backward compatible. That when I've talked, not everybody's convinced we need to make this change. And sort of what I've heard is like, if we do make this change, it should only affect new sites.
Yeah.
And, of course it should be backwards compatible. And so my solution with just changing the template does both of those things. Your point that it makes it sort of like, we're not actually, I wouldn't actually be removing the code in the template file. All I'm doing is overriding it by default. So anybody that actually went in and looked at the template is still going to see it there. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, my concern is not about like technically whether it's going to work or not. It's about if anyone new is going to understand it, because they're like, this is not where my block is on the page. Why is it in the template file here? Or like, if this isn't where it is and I have a block, why do I even need it in the template file? And I feel like maybe I'm not remembering this super clearly, but when we first started with Backdrop, we deliberately decided not to make these things blocks because they are mandatory. And when we added them as blocks, we only did it in a way that made it so that they were still mandatory, but they could also be blocks rather than just replacing them with blocks, because a block could be removed. And I don't know if my concern around this like understanding thing is a big enough reason to not implement it, but it did sort of set up a red flag where it's like, if I was someone new and I came to Backdrop and I saw all these things for blocks, I would be like, why is this in my template file? And then if I was going to make new ones, maybe I wouldn't add it. So I mean, there are a lot of maybes in there. But yeah, and so then I was like, can we look at other ways of doing it? And then this change would also affect like every theme. So regardless of what theme you used, if you'd
yours would, you mean?
Yours would,
no,
because you're changing the layout, and the layout. The layout will be in place for every theme.
Yeah, I get your point.
Yeah,
I mean, it would initially just affect basis because that's the default layout, but you're right. As soon as you change the theme, it would stick.
Yeah. So unless that theme had overridden, I mean, even if the theme had overridden the template, if you have blocks placed, it'll override every theme's version of that layout. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, so I thought, well, if the intent was to only change basis, maybe we should do it in basis, but that would have effects on downstream, like people who are using basis as a subtheme, or people who are using a site with basis as a whole. And I don't know, like some people might see it as an improvement, right? If you're just using stock Backdrop with no changes at all, and you're like, oh, why are my breadcrumbs over here? And then you would apply the update, you'd be like, oh, that's better. I feel like some people could still see that as an improvement, but I feel like those kind of changes should be opted into.
Right. I mean, the only reason that I've pursued this is it felt like it was an easy change that would be totally only affect new sites, and that it would just make Backdrop a little easier and friendlier to use out of the box. Again, to me, it's like every time I open up a basis theme and I see the breadcrumbs there, it just looks wrong, right? And it's like, it's not hard to fix. It's just like, if it looks wrong, why not, just make it look better?
So can we just move the breadcrumbs? Because those aren't required.
Well, my initial pull request actually moved more things around. This one, the only thing it moves is the breadcrumbs.
Oh,
But the only way to do that is to take it out, is to not use that default. So I have to place like 3 blocks on the page, but the only one that's in a different place is the breadcrumbs. Right? Because
Okay.
they were all covered by variables before, but the only way to break them is like to replace them with 3 blocks, I think.
So as long as we're not placing a block for page title, messages, or tabs, I'm fine with it. But I haven't looked at your most recent pull request, so I don't know if it's doing that.
Yeah, I don't know if we can, because aren't all 3 of those in one block to start with?
No, breadcrumbs are completely separate.
Well,
And breadcrumbs aren't covered by a variable in the template
okay.
file.
I will go back and look and see if that's possible.
Yeah. It could be that that's what your latest pull request is doing, and I haven't looked at that recently.
My variant, when I first proposed this issue, I also proposed moving the tabs, to where I thought they made more sense. But then, when there was a lot of people sort of push back, like maybe everybody doesn't want these, I realized the one thing that bugged me the most was the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
So
I think that's an easy win.
Right. So the most recent proposal is focused on just the breadcrumbs.
Okay,
We'll take a look at that. Well, people are showing up for the dev meeting. I don't know if there's anything else. I'm looking quick to see if there's anything else on the agenda that we should, well, maybe we postpone this to the next meeting. The CSS safely issue. I had put out a proposal recently that we possibly take that to the PMC. And my proposal was that we set a deadline for people to give their input, state their preferences. At the end of the deadline, we look to see if we have something close to a consensus. If not, we kick it to the PMC. And at this stage, I don't think that we're going to make a decision before the next release. So what I would propose is that people get whatever input they want on this issue in this release cycle. And then when we do the release, we, first thing in the next, after release, we come back to this issue, see if we're close to a consensus. If not, that we possibly take that to the PMC, because this seems to be the issue that just keeps coming up everywhere now. So I don't know if anybody wants to just, the only decision that would have to make here is if we wanted to sort of set a deadline. Get your input in by this date if you want to be heard. Why don't we just table that? We could bring that up again at the dev meeting if we want to, or we don't have to. Otherwise, we could just deal with that later. So let's close this meeting. Is there anything else? There was something in the chat earlier. Oh, that was, okay.
Right.